bad.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Varandas, also known as Ricky Varandas, and a great episode for you today. Today we have returning guests. Somebody who's been on the show quite a few times. Honestly, I'm not sure how many, but it's definitely a bunch. And he's also been on the Union of the Unwanted, my other show I host with Sam Tripoli, Midnight Mike, and Charlie Robinson. And the person I'm referring to is Richard Grove. He is truly a OG in this community. He's somebody I've been listening to and a fan of for a long time. And I'm really honored and blessed that I can consider him a friend now. We've hung out quite a few times. And that kind of comes out in our conversations. You can kind of tell we're casual. And it seems like just two buddies hanging out, which is always the feeling and the type of show I try to create. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder based on who the guest is and what you're talking about. But when Rich is on, I always know it's going to be an easy and fun conversation. And most likely I'm going to learn a few things. If you guys aren't familiar with some of his early work, we go into some of that on the show. We talk about the documentary that I love called State of Mind, The Psychology of Control. Also some of his older podcast projects, which I think are still relevant and still super important. But we also talk about his new project, Grand Theft World, which is a amazing show. It's about 5, 6, 7 hours sometimes. Sunday nights, he live streams. He discusses and dissects all the news that goes on during the week and much more. Goes into some historical stuff. I mean, it's just a really fun and awesome show. He has guests on. Sam Tripoli's been on there. Ryan from Last American Vagabond. James Corbett, just to name a few. Del Bigtree, I believe, has been on there. And it being a long show is beneficial because Monday mornings, when most of us have a long day and probably a job that they're not really enjoying and they need a way to kind of kill time and also provoke thought and learn something, I put on Grand Theft World Monday and it helps me get through my day. Sometimes it's 6, 7, 8 hours long. So I know there's enough content for me to listen to. And if the Ripple Effect Podcast has done the same for you and helped you get through your day, remember this is a value for value show. If you can't support the show financially, of course, share the show, review the show, subscribe to the show everywhere and anywhere, and that all helps. But if you can financially support the show, there's a couple methods of doing so. I have a PayPal account you can donate to. I have a crypto wallet if you want to donate crypto. I have a Patreon page. And if you support me on Patreon, once a month I do a Patreon podcast exclusively with my Patreon supporters. Then I release it on my RSS feed and all my channels. So you kind of get a chance to be on the Ripple Effect Podcast show. And Patreon really is one of the better ways of donating to the show because, one, you get to connect with me and other listeners, which is always a fun episode to do. But also, it's consistent. I know that I'm going to have those funds every month, and I like having that peace of mind. But if you don't want to support me on Patreon, I know some of you guys don't like Patreon because they have censored some people, and I completely understand. Like I said, I do have a PayPal account. I do have a crypto wallet. I also have a merch store. We have hoodies, mugs, t-shirts, tank tops, tumblers, kid clothes, tons of stuff. So go check out Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com to go directly to this store, or you can find it on my website, rippleeffectpodcast.com or rickyvarandas.com. And also on my website, you'll be able to find all my shows, Ricky Rants and Rockfin, which is a exclusive show for my Rockfin channel. If you guys aren't familiar with Rockfin, it's a video platform, so it's like a YouTube alternative. You can go there. It's uncensored. You can find tons of great content creators, many of them that have been on my show, and many of them that are hosts and guests on my other show, the Union of the Unwanted, which is a big Zoom conference call with thinkers, content creators, researchers, authors, and much more. So please check out that show. Wherever you listen to the Ripple Effect Podcast, the Union of the Unwanted is also most likely available. So subscribe to both shows. You can go to theunionoftheunwanted.com to find links to our merch, all the places you can find the show, and much more. So rippleeffectpodcast.com, theunionoftheunwanted.com, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace. We do. That was my fault because I completely forgot that you send me a Zoom link. So I think I created a meeting, sent you the link. I usually send it right before the show just so people don't have to go searching for it in their emails. And also a little bit because I'm usually running a little late, but mostly because I don't want people to search for it in their emails. So then I think I was in the one I sent you and you were in the one that you sent me.
And then I went to yours. It had an invalid pass or invalid meeting ID. That's when I texted you back. Yeah.
I think it's because I signed out of the meeting and ended the meeting because I'm like, well, what the hell's going on here? And
yeah, in my case, I hadn't even checked email today. I'd just been in Zoom meetings because they're all just in my Zoom calendar. So I opened up Outlook and then it threw me like, log into this and here's reminders. And I was just trying to find your link, but we got it done, dude.
We're good.
How you doing? How you doing? I'm doing wonderfully well. Thank you for asking. It's a beautiful time of year. It's like all sorts of fun things being planned and bringing closure to a very fortuitous work year.
I know you've been super busy and the show's been growing nonstop. I mean, Grand Theft World, I look forward to it. I don't usually listen to it on Sunday nights. Sometimes I listen to it if I'm playing. Well, when you first started, I used to listen to it on the way back from soccer because you
right.
Live
yeah, because I kept asking you to come on. You're like, I got soccer that night. I'm like,
yeah.
Well, eventually we're gonna sync up.
Yeah, it's yeah. Sundays, you know what it is too. Like, so there's been a couple Sundays where I'm like, oh, I could come on. Maybe I'll hit up Rich because either we have something going on during the day, which means I won't be at soccer that night. But then typically, what it also means is that if I have something going on, it means I'm drinking.
You're welcome to pop in any Sunday night. You can comment on stuff. You know, it can be casual. It doesn't have to be formal, dude. You can have yourself a cocktail. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you guys are all so smart, and I'm going to sound like an idiot because
maybe you make us have a cocktail with you temporarily. That could be, you know, something that happens. I know if Monica Perez is coming on in the future, she has a whole website suite of cocktails and how to make them and stuff like that. So it might be worked into the late night repertoire.
And I believe, didn't she's the one who she used to have that like private show she would do with listeners where they would drink. Did you know?
Yeah, I've never caught that, but I have seen I've seen the cocktail recipe website that she has, and that's quite impressive. And we didn't talk about it. I was on her show a couple weeks ago. We didn't talk about cocktails during that show or anything like that. Yeah, no cigars, no whiskey during that conversation.
Yeah, she told me about it. She's like, it's amazing. And then I think she says she deletes it afterwards, or there's no like no,
it's ephemeral. It's like this thing will delete self-destruct after you create it.
Yeah, so she's like, it's amazing what people will open up, you know, to you about when they know it's not being recorded, or at least, you know, it's going to be gone and it's confidential kind of. So it's yeah, I mean, it's well, I guess we can bring this to podcasting. The opposite is also true, where as much as I mean, you're pretty good at it because hanging out in person, you aren't any different on your show, which I actually like because you have a good sense of humor and you're really good at just, you know, throwing out jokes. And I mean, you definitely have me cracking up with some of the clever stuff you say on the show. And I like that because it's like, oh, I feel like I'm hanging out with Rich because this is how he is when we're hanging out. So I think people connect with that.
Yeah, it's a good extension of just first off, Grand Theft World podcast we do Sunday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern. That's like 15% of my work week. So I dedicate that to research and like feeding that need to know and understand what's going on, and then helping other people find the context and history behind the current events and all that sort of stuff. And it's like a good workout with my friends, and we do it for the benefit of people now and in the future, because I think there needs to be a good time capsule of what's going on now. Since there's so much censorship, we need to preserve elements of truth that point in the right direction and send them into the future through you know, these time capsules we call podcasts. because that's the thing. It's not live. Well, we live stream it, but once it becomes a podcast, it's just this piece of evergreen content that reflects this time in history, right? So there's the people chatting live, and that's all fun, and the comments and the memes and all these sort of things, of the community aspect of it. We do a town hall on Tuesday nights that goes for another 6 hours, where the listeners can actually ask questions and we get like deep into some of these content. But yeah, it's like a good practical application of my hobby time. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I love this show, and I know there's probably people who are maybe new, because I think in 2020, a lot of people who weren't into this world or consuming this content are now regular listeners and viewers. And but see, it's funny because people who don't know you from before, like I knew you from like way back in the day as a 9/11 whistleblower and a historian, and you know, the Peace Revolution podcast. You kind of got out of podcasting for a while. What made you want to get, because this is something I'm just curious, because I haven't asked you, what made you want to get back into podcasting? Because you do seem like the type of person like myself who's very OCD, obsessive compulsive. When you do something, you're all in. If anybody ever listened to the Peace Revolution podcast, they know all about that. And like, so you knew it was going to take like a big chunk of your time and whatnot. Like, what made you want to do it anyways and dive into the podcast world again?
All right. So the Peace Revolution podcast, which I did consistently from 2009 to 2018, that was more, what is the research behind this globalist new world order element? What is the evidence and artifacts and these different pieces of history, from anywhere from the JFK assassination to Operation Gladio to Cecil Rhodes and the Last Will and Testament, and De Beers, and how they made diamonds from this worthless clear stone that nobody wanted, and used some PR campaigns to make everyone trade like 3 months salary for this thing that represents love. Now it's really interesting dynamics of behaviorism and control over the population. So Peace Revolution kind of goes out and takes these different subjects and then says, what is available on the internet to preserve for the future about this topic? So when I did like the JFK 50th anniversary episode, that's 20 solid hours, not of me talking. My opinion is not in these episodes almost at all. It's artifacts and evidence that are reflective of something other than the official story. So it's preserving those splinters in the mind, putting them together. And once people get so many of them, they're like, maybe Oswald didn't act alone, or maybe he didn't even do it, or maybe there's a lot more going on than we were taught in school or shown to us on the news. And that's the point. It's not that I know all these things. I'm like, this is how it is. It's like, this is at least where it goes. And when you pick up on this, then you can find it and go further, because I don't have time to read everything, but I do. Over the years, I have read a lot, and I've read the books and artifacts that specifically pertain to a focused problem, which is there is a multi-generational group of organized criminals focused only on destroying America and individual freedom and liberty. And they're really well organized, orchestrated. They got working groups, they got funding. They have a big lie out there that everyone buys into. And that's where that assumption that lie is true is where they give up their control. So it's no longer pointed sticks or swords or cages, literally, as the first level. It's more, give up your right to think for yourself, give up your own observation capabilities and processing capabilities, and take the output or the rhetoric of the authority as your form of truth. And that leads only down to the slaughterhouse and slavery. So Peace Revolution was more telling people about the problem. Well, that has to go on, but we also need to work on the solutions. So I got to episode 93 of the Peace Revolution. So there's a lot of 10, 15, 20-hour episodes in there. So that's quite a body of content that I did over those 10 years. I got to a point where I did an episode on the history, form and function, origins of libertarian economic philosophy. That also is a 20-hour episode. So it goes into SEK3 and all these sort of Mises and Rothbard and all the big thinkers of the movement. And it covered what I felt was like, here's the history of this thing. And then episode 94, which I have not finished. It's been like a couple of years because I started working on other projects, and you'll understand why here in a second. Episode 94 was going to be practical applications of libertarian economics. So I got done with this episode, and then I started practicing libertarian economics, started making more offers to my audience of an entrepreneurial training variety. And then I had a huge number of people coming to me, and that started taking up more and more time. And it was such a higher and better and more direct application use of my time, because you're working with real human beings, one-on-one, dynamic, interactive, immersive feedback. They grow really fast, they get results. That's a very valuable experience. So in my practicing the principles of that episode, I actually made like things inside of the Peace Revolution. So I have these other projects that when I continue the Peace Revolution podcast, and I have another 40 episodes in folders where I have, bits and pieces of the elements that'll take up and make those episodes. So I do have plans for the future of that podcast and getting that content out, but it's not as important as balancing it currently, especially in today with COVID and everything, in the environment of helping people survive and thrive. So it's good to know about the problems, who they are. It's they, them, those who can easily be named. And it takes a long time to give you all their names and the context and background. That's good, because if you don't know that, you don't know your environment. But if you don't know yourself and what your value is to the world and what you're good at and what other people value, and find utility based where they would trade money so you can pay your bills and find a job or start a business or learn how to consult or contract based on experience you already have, right? Without that, I felt like a lot of listeners were like unsubscribing because they can't afford $15 a month. I'm like, that's a very solvable problem. We're not taught in school how to go out, find our value, develop some high value skills, make our offer to the market, put that marketing to work so that you can find enough people that want your contracted service or product, and then move about freely in the world autonomously. So from that episode of Peace Revolution, I took ideas that I had, formulated them into a training course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course that I run twice a year, and it's lifetime enrollment. So a lot of the students who graduate continue to go through it. Now that I was doing that, I wasn't podcasting. I have all this research in my head. I got all this stuff building up around me that I want to comment on. I owned a website URL called Grand Theft World. I bought it like in 2010, 2012. It had been sitting there. I've been paying domain fees for years and years on it. And I said now I had a production team, because I had graduates from Autonomy that were qualified to help me. So then I could systematize and delegate and diversify and start a new business where we have a consulting business. And so it went from just Tragedy and Hope to Autonomy and then a consulting company. And that's all thriving. So that's 85% of my week. But I wanted to put Grand Theft World to work. So I said to the media production team, hey, can we take this URL? Can we make a landing page? I want to feature like 30 to 50 Liberty-based content creators. I want a weekly feed. I want live real-time feed of all their stuff. So I have to go to one site. I can see all my friends, all my colleagues, all their productions on a page. And they're like, that's possible. So we did that. And I was like, oh, wait, before that, they came back and said, hey, maybe you want to buy the URL back because it's available. And I was like, what? So I must have a couple years ago thought, I'm not going to do anything with that project, And so I bought it back. So I had it, I lost it. I didn't know I lost it. So I wanted to use it. Then we quickly bought it back. It was still available. So then we launched the site, and then the election was going on. And I thought, well, this is a good opportunity to launch a show. So we launched it like election day last year. So we just passed our year anniversary. We're in episode 58, I think, this week. Did that answer your question comprehensively and to your satisfaction, Ricky?
Yeah, it did. Well, I think that's a part of podcasting. Is one of the motivations is the fact that you're doing all this research, you're doing all this reading, and then it's like, I want to do something with it. I want to talk about what I'm going through or what I'm thinking, what's going through in my head. And I find that past podcasts, like when I first started, I did a lot more talking. And then because you had all these things kind of just swirling in your head, and you're like, I have all these opinions and research and interesting things I've read and watched that I want to share with people. And then as you get older, or as you get further in your podcasting, you become much more of a listener, and I think it's in my DNA to talk, so I'm not going to ever be 100% of a listener. I'm always going to be a talker. But I think that's a motivation, right? Like if you're constantly inhaling information, you want to share it in one way or another.
Yes. Okay, so my first observation is yes, Ricky, you are a talker. And yes, Ricky, over the past couple of years, you've greatly refined your listening skills. And when you interrupt, it has purpose. I just commented on Christy Lee. She does those independent reports. When she was interviewing Robert Kennedy, there's a couple times when she interviewed her. And since I teach students all the time how to interview and what the listening skills are in 80-20, so you should be asking 20% questions, doing 80% listening. When Christy Lee interrupted RFK Jr., they were times when it totally added value. She got him back on track. She brought out this point. That's an appropriate point to interrupt somebody during the interview. But otherwise, you ask your open-ended question at the start of the conversation, and that lets them take the floor, express their ideas. And then when you want to bring the interview to a close, you ask a few closed-ended questions. Where can people find your work? These sort of things, right? Short, small answers. And it's the same thing in real life. So when I teach students, for instance, the interviewing skill, it's just how to have a conversation with people. And then if you want to learn the sales skill, that high value, high ticket skill, it's how to have a conversation, identify a problem, make a better plan. It's not cringeworthy, persuady, pushy, all these things that we think of, right? So people can develop these skills, but they're all just interpersonal skills. Know yourself, know your environment, and know how to communicate with people. So it starts with making contact, building rapport, and then during that time, they're probably going to have a problem. And if you can help them solve that problem, that's a value, that's a utility-based experience. The whole economy is based on this. And if you don't learn how to interact as a buyer, as a seller in there, the seller is always going to have an advantage over you. So caveat emptor, buyer beware. And learning how to ask the questions as a buyer, it's asking questions and listening, or calling somebody and asking questions and listening. But your point about the listening skills, it's one of the most valuable skills. It's underrated. People think, oh, it's not a big deal, but it is such a big deal, because when you're helping people to solve a problem, you have to bring your curiosity, which means you can't assume. And if you assume, you're going to use a lot of declarative sentences instead of asking questions. So if you take the I want to understand, help me understand, if you take that tack, whether in a conversation or in a sales meeting or negotiating something at work for a raise, it's all the same thing. But we are not given these skills in school. In fact, they make us shy away from these skills. Don't talk to strangers. Be scared of talking in front of the class because you're going to get ridicule. Be afraid of failure, because failure over time, if you learn from it, leads to success. So that's like a pathway. So if we're all scared to take the first move, you're never going to fall down, get up, and build the skills to actually do the thing that you want to do that sets you free, which is another way that they keep everyone kind of servile, subjugated, and enslaved.
Yeah, and our mutual friend Brett Venat, who I think retired from podcasting not too long ago, he, you guys would talk a lot about the school system and a lot of the issues with just kind of teaching people how to regurgitate information instead of critical thinking and whatnot. And you see, like, it was almost an issue that, okay, yeah, that's an issue, but most people can think for themselves, and most people can probably still establish some critical thinking skills. But you saw it during this lockdown, and you saw it throughout, and you're still seeing it. Things will logically make zero sense. Officials will contradict themselves, and yet there's still a percentage of the population that will continue to just do what you're told. And I think this is all because of it's kind of what they were taught to do.
If you were from another planet and you're like, hey, what's going on here? And I started explaining the timeline of America, and I stopped like around the mid 1800s, you'd say, there's no way you could get from there to where you guys are today. What is going on? And say, oh, all these American ideas that started to build the place, they got outsourced to our globalist enemies, who we call our allies, right? And these people brought in a change of education system to turn it into forced indoctrination prescribed by the state. Like I remember back when I first met Brett, one of the first jokes that he told and I stole was, hey, Ricky, what's the difference between the mafia and the government?
I don't know.
The mafia doesn't have a 15,000 hour indoctrination plan to convince you that they're not the mafia.
That's true.
So this education system corrupted into a schooling system. Let's call that Prussian schooling. Some people they call it Prussian education, but really it's the opposite of education. Education is asking questions, finding substantial, meaningful answers, learning and applying that to reality to get better results. What they do through schooling is full-fledged declarative sentences, Here's the authority. Don't question it. Regurgitate it back. That's a form of training for interchangeable parts, which led to interchangeable people. And then in the 20th century, that's all modernized, militarized, and that military, pharmaceutical, media, industrial complex took over the world, or is in the midst of really locking it down right now. So this absence in, yes, people do know how to think critically on occasion, but most of their decisions are outsourced to assumption, to authority, to things they don't understand. And when we're participating and making decisions and things we don't understand, that's a very vulnerable area where we could lose freedom rapidly, right? So being able to call upon a specific, in our case, what I teach is a 3-step method to go from the observation, that's where you're just existing. We have our 5 common senses. These are senses that we have in common. That's why it's called common sense, right? And then identifying that which exists, fitting these pieces together. How do they fit together? Oh, there's a contradiction. Well, contradictions shouldn't be existing. So there's a misunderstanding, a misinterpretation, a missing piece of evidence. Now we've got an understanding. Now we can go forward, make a decision, a judgment, a choice, and bring about actions in our life that are pleasing to us. That's not what schooling does. 15,000 hours plus some college, plus some other jobs that are pointless, aimless, kind of cogs in a machine that you don't understand the workings of. That's no way to go through life, but that's the best offer society has. And they've raised the price of that offer to hundreds of thousands of dollars to get that broken system. I argue the system's not broken. It produces exactly what they want. Supple, supplicant, submissive people who don't question authority. They're very dependent on the terrarium lifestyle. Yes, Biden bucks, please. They're hoping for universal basic incomes like their best bet. Whereas other people who know how to look, there's trillions of dollars being spent every day on the internet. 99% of these companies use a very similar infrastructure. They have a web page with an offer and a headline and a call to action that clicks into the transaction or the shopping cart, and being able to facilitate those elements, that tech stack for entrepreneurs, especially in the freedom and liberty community, right? The freedom and liberty community, the biggest problem is people have an aversion to sales. They don't do any marketing. They don't have a product that can afford marketing for themselves, and then they go out of business, or they're always with their hand out. And I know, because I lived for a lot of years doing that, but then I was like, I don't need to do this because I have the skills to put together a higher ticket offer. More value to help more people equals more income to do the things that I need to do at a higher level. And it's self-supporting without going to the outside and without depending on charity, right? So most people don't know how to offer their value to the market. There's an interview that Guy Ritchie did with Joe Rogan. In that interview, there's a heavy conversation about the prodigal son and the suit of armor that men wear to go out into the world every day, this metaphor, right? And Joe Rogan's trying to keep up with them. But there's a quote in there, and the quote is something like this: you have to prostitute yourself to the world until you learn your true value, right? So there's a lot of people out there underselling themselves because they haven't put their value together yet. So they're working as a fry cook, but they might have a very high calling that's a couple steps away, but they're not there yet. So they're kind of underselling their time. There's people driving Uber when they could be making $100,000 a year someplace else, that they have a lot more say in their life, and it's less, I'll be there in 5 minutes, right? So quality of life, what types of things do you need? And then building an infrastructure system to support those things in a way that you're writing your own script in life and not dependent on, gee, I hope the company gives me a raise, or I hope the company doesn't lay me off, or I hope the company doesn't mandate me to do X, Y, Z. Taking control back, it involves self-responsibility and doing self-work, and then aligning that with an accurate picture of what the environment is. And then you can take actions that lead to success and satisfaction. And I think that's the missing element that Prussian schooling imported into America, crushed the American dream and the ability for people to truly build a strong legacy of freedom today and leave that to their children for tomorrow.
But don't you think, and not, so I agree with you, but I also think that sometimes even just putting any focus into monetary issues will take away from maybe what artistically you're doing. Because I think once you start analyzing ways of making more money, for a lack of a better term, sometimes the things that you discover will impact what you do artistically. Do you get what I'm saying? So like, okay, if I know that having these type of guests get me more clicks, or if I talk about these type of topics, it gets me more downloads. And I'm using, I guess, podcasting as an example because we're both podcasters, or even music, for example. Like, oh, if I write this type of music, it gets me more downloads or it gets more people listening. But it might not be where organically I would be if I wasn't worried about the downloads. And historically, at least, like a lot of artists that I'm fans of, and I know more about it in regards to the metal genre and industrial genre and the music that I grew up listening to and still follow. The bands that really break through seem to be the ones that could care less about, like, okay, this type of music is fringe or this type of music isn't popular. Maybe this is we're discovering a new type of music that we don't even know if there's a fan base for, but we're doing it because we're passionate about our art. And then they end up breaking through and becoming, financially stable.
I think that's a good point. These two things are often confused. So here's how it works. You're going to be successful the moment that you know truly inside that you won't quit on yourself. It has nothing to do with the downloads or the clicks or doing. So don't corrupt your art by making things you think people will like. I don't look at downloads. I don't put things in. I know I do things that put people off unnecessarily sometimes just because I was being me. Sorry, it's not for everyone, right? I'm not trying to conform. I mean, the whole idea of my long form content in the first place, people are like, podcasts have to be 20 minutes. No one's going to listen to a 20-hour podcast. I'm like, no, sorry. This is what this topic needs to have preserved for the future. If you find it listenable, cool. If not, I'm making it anyway. And it was never about pleasing advertisers or sponsors because I didn't have any. All I had was I do this work, and if people like it, they would support me. And then that grew through the first 3 years of podcasting to where I told my wife, I don't think you have to work anymore. We can do this full time. And that started in 2009, and we're still doing that. And now we have 2 other profitable companies to go with that. Now, to your question about making money, it depends. Is it your art, or are you providing a service to people? Because they're not always the same thing. I make art, that's over here. I provide useful services to people who go from here to here with their revenue. That's very valuable to them. I don't mind asking for my value as part of that process, right? I help out a lot of my friends in the Liberty community who are struggling. And when I go and see what they have going on, okay, you got a website and you got this, and you're producing some content. But where is the value that you're translating to your audience? Is it in the book? Is it in a course? Is it in a documentary? Where's the thing that's a little bit more than the free thing that you're producing out there, right? And then when they formulate that, they make incredible strides. Like anywhere from like, here's an extra $5,000 a month to I've got several clients, including myself at one point in the past year, 200 grand in a month from making an offer and providing a huge amount of service to people and doing that with integrity and advertising form and function over some crazy hyperbolized results that you're going to get. It's like the skills internalized start to pay for themselves as soon as you start using them every day. Do you ever solve problems every day? Wouldn't it be good to have a method to call on instead of ad hoc making up how do I solve a problem every time something jumps out at me that's unscheduled? So these modalities of thinking, communication, how to take action, accountability, that's what gives people traction. And when I give my friends traction, guess what? They get their service work in front of other people, right? Their art as well as the thing that they're offering. So if you want to bring a book to market that talks about government being a scam, like one of my friends is doing, books cost money, shipping costs money. It takes relationship management to get bookstores to carry this, to have all these other things go on. There's a lot of services that get rung up to his account every month, from creating and maintaining the website and the email autoresponder, all these things he needs to do to be in business just to have a book offering, right? And once you create something higher value than a book, it's more easy to have the marketing that brings your message of freedom to more people. So the people that are successful and mobile and can do what they want when they want readily without having to be dependent on, I don't know how I'm going to do that. They have plans in place to facilitate and fuel their forward progression. So I was just making that observation.
Yeah.
How's that?
No,
so you don't, yeah. And you have a day job, so you don't have to make your podcasting like your thing, right? You have a family business.
Yeah, but I'm always intrigued with people who I remember the first time I had Greg Carlwood on my show. he literally just quit his full-time job, and I remember how like excited I was for him, and I loved hearing these success stories because in a sense, it gives people like myself who still have a full-time job that they aren't big fans of and hope to do their passion project full time, like it gives us hope because it's like, okay, it can be done and it has been done. And every time I hear a success story, it's important. I mean, equally, it's important to hear failure stories because, like I always tell listeners, I think a lot of times it becomes discouraging because they hear about the Ripple Effect podcast, or they hear about, Grand Theft World, and they think like, oh, these shows must have just blown up overnight. And, it's
No, it's a grind. And you have to just be okay with you're going to grind and it might not go anywhere fiscally. But if you're doing it right and you take each step with integrity, you're always going to be in the place where you're in a good spot. You take these steps with integrity. You're not going to be in some crazy off the beaten path kind of place, right? You're going to be around honest, trustworthy people. You're going to be surrounded by opportunities. And it's which opportunities every day do you want to entertain? No longer, where do I get opportunity? Because that life sucks. It's better to set up and know where your trap line is, where the game are walking through for hunting and how to farm and store and preserve and be self-reliant instead of having to go to the market desperate, because that doesn't work. Needy is creepy. Not knowing how to meet our needs puts people off, especially people who do know how to meet their needs, because they feel like maybe you're going to take something from them. And that's a scarcity mindset that needs to be overcome before wealth in the mind could manifest into some actions that lead to wealth in reality. So it comes back to having respect for ourselves. And if you don't respect yourself or have self-confidence yet, that's a great starting point. Let's move forward from there and not stay there for the next 10 years, right? Most people are not in the best place where they could be right now. And there's certain things that they could do to quickly alleviate that situation. But not everyone's interested in that. Some are comfortable in their quiet desperation, though they do complain a lot. But, they get less and less time on your schedule. That's all.
But I also think it's a trick, like you get tricked into believing that college is well, first, I think at a young age, you get tricked in believing that materialism and more ones and zeros in your bank account is the road to happiness. And a lot of people sacrifice a lot of things that would make them happy, like time with their friends and family and maybe doing passion projects or hobbies they enjoy, to go down the road that they think is going to bring them happiness.
But only because they're denied the map of where they could go with their potential, right? Instead, they're funneled into this thing. How many people do you know who have a passion but have never thought about starting a business around that passion? They make some craft. Oh, I don't know how to sell it. They don't know the first thing of how to take their offer, their passion to market, right? You have someone who does incredible
everybody is going
knitting, but there's people on Etsy that would buy their stuff right now, but they're struggling to pay rent. So they do have a skill. They just need to hook a couple things up. Some people don't have a skill that other people would pay for. That's also a starting point. But continuing to hope for the best in this system that's predatory is not a good plan for 2022.
Well, I tell the listeners all the time that whatever they enjoy doing, whatever it may be, if it's playing the guitar or keyboard, if it's painting, woodwork, whatever it may be, do it and find time to do more of it. And if you can make a business out of it, that's great. But I also think there's, for example, like your podcast, Peace Revolution podcast, you didn't care if you had 1,000 downloads or 1 million downloads or whatever. You were gonna, like you said, you're gonna continue doing it anyways, because
the next episode was going to be what it was going to be anyway. Exactly. And to tell you the truth, the only time I've looked at the stats for that podcast in the past 10 years was last week, and the last episode I did had 50,000. So I can only assume that the earlier episodes have more than that, because if that many people made it to episode 93, that's pretty cool. And that's just on Podomatic. I think I didn't check Libsyn, which is the older feed from 2006 that's still there.
Yeah. So my point is, like, so a lot of times, like, and I not to put words in your mouth, but a lot of times when you're talking about success, it does, we talk about money, and what I try to tell listeners is that, of course, that's that's the next step. Like you find something you love, you do it. That brings you some sense of satisfaction, fulfillment, purpose in life, which I think is the most valuable.
That's funny. It's funny, right? Because I think of it like the purpose is the journey and the destination eventually, right? But you got to enjoy the journey on the way. You can't be like waiting to get on vacation to have fun, right? You got to enjoy the whole time, right? Money's like the gas that goes in the car that allows the thing to go on faster or slower, right? We can walk it or we can ride in the car. If we don't have fuel, we're walking it. A lot of people walking it these days. I'm like, at least get a bicycle, right? At least learn how to self-power. And then if you have marketing, then you can make a car and you can go further faster with your business. But at least go from walking to learning how to ride a bicycle. And it's awkward at first, it's a little uncomfortable, and it doesn't look like fun until you see people riding bicycles, right? And that's what I compare like the autonomy course to, because that's how it translates. It's not the end all be all. It's not the rocket ship. Rocket ship, you take these principles and you apply, you know, you're going to have to do some work. But what people are doing to rocket ship their business is available to almost anybody. And you can do it yourself. We can tell you how to do it. We can do it for you. There's a whole bunch of levels where people could take action. So it's more about making it known that there's possibility, something on the menu that they haven't seen, and letting people, you know, do what they do and nature take its course.
Yeah, and that's why I think your message is so important, because what I was trying to get to was the fact that something you keep saying over and over again that I think is so important is find your value. Like there's so many people out there who are working jobs that they hate and doing things that they don't enjoy, and they do have a talent or something that makes them special and unique. And regardless if you do eventually turn into a business or not, I mean, obviously, like I said, that's the next step. If you can do that, everybody wants to be doing something they enjoy for a living. You know, I think every podcaster, including myself, that's kind of the goal. But even if you just pursue it initially just because it gives you a sense of purpose or fulfillment, and you know, why not show that you have some value? Like you said, you have some value. It's something about you makes you special, makes you valuable. You can put out something that's unique to the world, and just putting it out or creating it is success to a lot of people. And that's okay too. You know, just knowing and understanding that there is something unique about every individual. Well, not every individual. I think there are just some people that are born to be, you know, hole diggers and working in the construction business. I know plenty of them, but you know, and that's okay too. You know, if that's what you consider a noble life, where you're just like, you know what, I'm going to work my ass off. Maybe, you know, I don't have any unique talent, but you know, showing up to work every day and working your ass off is a talent these days. So that alone, and being reliable is a lost art right
Yeah,
now.
it's like the easiest time in history to find work. There's
Yeah.
tens of millions of jobs out there, and it's just like so you still have to know how to go and how to ask, right? You could walk into a business and say, what's your biggest problem, leads or labor? Which one? We got too many people waiting on leads. Great. Here's, you know, I know some people. You don't have to have the solutions, right? Or even just, let's say you're a podcaster and you're probably not going to be Joe Rogan of podcasting, but you know what you already know how to do? Produce a podcast. And you know what other people who podcast and are overwhelmed with other things to do pay for? People to upload, people to download, people to distribute, people to write copy, people to make bumpers, people to edit. All these things are right there, and all you have to do is be able to make an offer. Now, you might not know who to make an offer to, and you might be working with yourself and not a lot of experience. That's what stops people. There's like, I don't have money to do this, or I don't know how to do this, right? If you take these excuses away, all these people who work forward can be left with is success. Take away the obstacles and the excuses, success is what happens, right? So now we know what we're up against, problems we have to solve and excuses we have to overcome within ourselves. Sounds like a discipline plus some practice plus networking problem could solve this rapidly. Is that available anywhere? They offer that at Harvard or Yale or Stanford? They don't do that there, right? So it's a big market. There's a lot of people in need. Some of those people want to take action beyond just listening to stuff and hearing about these things. They say, and then they learn how to. How do you make your offer to Ricky for distribution? Like, did Matt Raymer ever make you an offer for some sort of distribution for Content Safe?
Oh, no. Well, what do you mean offer for, yeah. I mean, he puts out all my content.
How did that happen? What was the process?
A little bit was your help.
All right. So networking, I knew you had a problem. I knew he did that thing. I said, you guys should talk. Right. And at one point he was like, hey, what you guys need is, and I was like, well, that's a product you know how to make, dude. So let's figure out how to take it to market. And then I helped him structure it and how to price it and then how to introduce it to people. give it to some VIPs, real low cost, hook us up, right? Let us show that it works. And then with those testimonials, you can go get bigger fish. VIP clients who might not be freedom oriented, but they have a need, charge them full price, right? But for the brothers in arms within the freedom movement, we're all struggling. Let's help each other out. Let's be the rising tide that lifts all ships. So without Matt knowing how to make that offer, he's just an entrepreneur juggling, spinning plates over there. But when he found something that can really add service to something that he loves and has passion about, like the freedom community and us getting our content, because what he was doing was one-off, just backing everything up for like me and Corbett and select other people. And he's just got like massive archives. If you guys get taken down, I got all your stuff. I'm like, that'd be valuable to other people. And there's people afraid of being taken offline and losing their content. There's people who have content needed put on other sites. And then he took all my content from Vimeo and put it on BitChute overnight. I was like, I want more, please. And now it's like on Float and Rumble and all these other places that I've been there once. I created an account, I give, and then it distributes. So without Matt learning how to take his offer to market, do episodes of the Union of the Unwanted, like you're providing a marketplace and a platform where like Jeremy from Library and Jaime from Rockfin can talk to people like Matt, and they can grow their businesses together, and together free speech and freedom that comes along with it. I mean, all the entrepreneur stuff that I'm talking about and teaching about, that's dependent on freedom, which is why I do Grand Theft World, because without freedom, like, dude, you ever read about communist China back in the 50s and what goes on? It's not something any of us want to live through, or Soviet gulags, or Eastern Bloc Europe and the Stasi and Germany. Not interested in repeating that history. So we have to learn our way out of it. And part of that is being comfortable bringing our offers to market, accepting 9 no's and say, I got 1 yes, we're moving forward. That's what marketing is. I might send an offer out to 3,000 people. If 30 people take me up on it, we're in business. We can help a lot of people. I think the first year that we launched the Autonomy Unlimited consulting company, we did 100K in business, but we did 100K in pro bono for the freedom community. So balancing our values with our actions the whole time seems like a good way to go so far. And the second year was like double what we did the first year. So freedom is thriving for people taking action.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. Yeah, and let me plug Matt from Content Safe. I plug him all the time because he really does do me a huge service in regards to just saving me tons of time. And so people who are listening, Content Safe, I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about it in the past, but he's the one who sends out all my videos to all the platforms. He syncs all my video channels together. At one point, YouTube was in that list, but it's no longer a part of that. But Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, Rockfin, all those places. And he does a bunch of other stuff too. He built my website and helped me out with that, which was really awesome. And he's literally one of the nicest people I've ever met. Anytime I have an issue or just want to change something on the website or something like that, he's always like super quick with getting back to me and helping out as best as he can. And I'm always super excited to be able to give back or help out anybody who's in the movement and passionate about this stuff. Matt's he's not just somebody who's helping content creators, but he's a fan of content creators, and he really cares about this information. And those are the type of people I really like working with, and I really enjoy working with and helping out any way I can. I've always been really good at networking. So, and I think you're really good at that too. So, I've tried to help him out in that aspect, give some value back for all the help he's given me in regards to just helping him out with networking.
For years, I didn't even know what he did. Like he listened to my podcast. He was a member in the Tragedy and Hope community. And then I started talking with him. I was like, wow, this guy's really smart. And then I like, hey, what have you done and what kind of things do you do? And I was like, God, I verified my suspicions. He's really smart. And so to have him participate in some of the blue sky meetings and research and development on these problems that the liberty and freedom community has about like telecommunications and security and ephemeral nature of censorship and data. And I want to be able to put data on the internet, IPFS, one time, can't be taken down. It's there forever. Being able to facilitate the next generation of how we get our content to our audiences and serve them with either current events or history or education. We need to get that done sooner than later, because this Grand Theft World that they're doing for real, they're like, this place could turn into Austria or Australia with a couple strokes of the pen. They have so many people hypnotized at this point. If we don't start doing things to break that pattern and to wake those people up with some comparison contrast, like, if these things contradict, maybe we should question them and not assume that both things are true, because that's a problem. People who believe those two things are true at the same time, that double think, that's a sign of control. And Orwell wasn't the first to come up with it. He's just like, here's what they're doing to people now in 1947, 48.
Well,
So technology's changed. It's improved. People don't notice it as much.
now's a great time to plug one of my favorite documentaries of all time, and you actually have it right next to you. State of Mind, Psychology of Control is still one of my favorite. I'm not one to go back and rewatch documentaries. I've rewatched that quite a few times just because there's so many historical events that you guys refer to that I forget about, and so much information in there. And so if people haven't watched it, please find it anywhere you can. Well, actually, maybe I should.
That's the tough part, Ricky. It's not for sale. It's like, it's out of print. It's off the market. I know two places where it can be had, though. If you go to grandtheftworld.com, become a member, it's in all the membership, gets all my films and stuff I've done for free. It's in there. Otherwise, you can go to tragedyandhope.com and use the search box, which is down in the lower left-hand side nav. You type in State of Mind, and you'll find the InfoWars premiere with me and at Alex Jones' studio, and it's still on YouTube. Shh, don't ruin it for me. All right. It's servicing people out there quietly. So those are the two places you can check out State of Mind. And I was a co-writer on that. And I was also interviewed from the film. They interviewed me and then came to me and said, would you write? And then I got my buddy, Kevin Cole, and I was like, hey, we could do this. Let's do this. And it was a good experience. We took 40 hours of interview footage that those guys shot, and we transcribed everything, identified the hot spots, organized those into a story, cut the footage together into a 6-hour supercut, director's cut that I made. And then we gave them a 90-minute version. And then eventually they released it with Alex later. They cut that deal for distribution. And I don't know where that's at. So that's why I can't say, oh, I'll just make more copies of it, because I didn't do the final product. But I do know where you can get those two versions.
Who did the narration? Because
Lisa did, my wife.
I was gonna say I'm almost positive I recall that it was Lisa, because that's actually the way she narrated it, and like the tone and everything. Like it was one of the parts I really enjoyed. Was like, I'm like, everything fits together so well. Like her voice and the way she presents stuff. It was just, and the music, like the tone of it, and it's so important because something, I think when I had Dr. David Martin about I don't know, some time ago on the show, we talked about how like he's like, he's not panicking because he's like, this has happened before. He's like, this and your documentary, which obviously came out a while ago, came out
2013, I think it was. Yeah, you
can see historically, I mean, one, you can see how people, as long as there have been people, there's always been a group of people who want to control the other group of people. Like that's just has historically always happened. And these tactics have been used and reused over and over again.
And the only thing different is how they package it on the outside and what technology they're using really to do it. But they're nearing the place with all this virtual reality and, transhumanism, or they're going to go off the beaten path pretty quick. And they're looking to do that because they feel threatened. They know people, like, they got a ticking clock now. They have to move their 2030 agenda up several years. They had a 2030 agenda to have everyone on the planet vaccinated. That was a UN agenda. They also have a depopulation agenda that has a 2030 number to it. So you have to ask the question, or just observe that some of the people, most of the people, all the people that want depopulation and these sort of things, they're also participating in this other thing. So it's not accidental when you've got, people mentored by Warren Buffett, who was a huge population council, negative population growth committee type person, who mentors Bill Gates. And now Gates, who already had a eugenics family history, is like spearheading that movement for, the Good Club or the super rich friends. And they are doing what they want because they have endless amounts of money. They're stealing the money first off the till. Like, they're printing trillions and just taking it off the top. And then here's $1,400. It's crazy. That's why it's Grand Theft World. Never in human history have you seen such a large transfer of wealth in such a short time with so little resistance. During World War II, there's a lot of resistance, a lot of people, a lot of bloody death, bombs, rockets, all these other things going on. It's a very quiet war. It's like silent weapons for quiet wars out there right now. It's going on. People are being adversely affected, but they don't know exactly where it's coming from yet. It's fog. It's like the fog of war, fog machine of war they got going on right now. So bringing this content out, it's meant to be evergreen. It's not just like this is applicable in 2013. It's like, no, this is what they're doing, and it's going to continue going on to the crescendo unless people learn what it is, how it works, and what to do amongst ourselves to resist it effectively. And as far as Lisa narrating it, I think she styled her narration after Michaela J, who did the great work for the corporation, and then Scott Noble. All his films, I think, are narrated by Michaela. She does great work. And then Lisa was just doing it as we wrote the script. Hey, record this. Let's see if it matches up with picture, these sort of things, right? And we were in talks with Sean Young, who was in like Blade Runner and those films back then, to do the voice narrator, but she flaked because she's a flaky person. And so Lisa just ended up doing it, and it was better than if Crazy Mary would have been involved.
Yeah, well, it's funny now that you say that, because I've had somebody from the corporation on my show years ago.
Yeah.
And that's another one of those documentaries.
Epic documentary.
Epic. And it was the highest, I think the most watched Canadian documentary in like history. I think the Culture High ended up beating it with Adam Scorgie, who was also on my show years ago. But I remember I was talking about that in regards to two great Canadian documentaries. But so important. But now that you say that, that makes perfect sense, because now that I'm thinking about the corporation, the narration style is very similar, and it does sound kind of alike. Maybe they should just put women talking in documentaries. It keeps our attention. Well, at least it keeps males' attention.
Don't give away the secrets, man.
I should use some auto tune or something to make this.
Never.
I'm kidding.
Never. It's like the death of music right there.
But yeah, those are there's, I almost feel like sometimes we're talking about old gems of albums that people who like weren't around at that time are going to forget about and won't get the credit that they deserve. I feel like documentaries are the same thing, because before podcasts were really consumed at the rate that they are now, a lot of us were, before we're podcast addicts, we were documentary addicts. And I mean, I would stay up late at night, and you could find, this is back in the day, the good old days, when you can actually find some really interesting stuff on YouTube, and you would find some really awesome documentaries that who's the married couple? What is it, Truth Stream or what?
Aaron and Melissa Dykes. They both used to work at InfoWars, and then it's against InfoWars policies, I think, to have a relationship. So they're like, we like each other more than we like you, and they split. They've been doing great work since 2013. I'm in the middle of watching their Trust Game 10-hour series, because I'm a fan of long form content as well as a maker of it. And they're fantastic.
Yeah, they made some really great documentaries back in the day. I didn't know that they used to work at it.
They're short films, even Melissa's rants, they're all entertaining, insightful. They provide value. There's just like different things that they do really well. And they write it, they shoot it, they edit it, they promote it, they package it, and then they go on to the next project.
Yeah.
I'd like to see people like them have more support. And if there's anything that we can do at Autonomy Unlimited, then they're VIP clients. I owe them a debt just from watching their work.
They're still on YouTube, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they're still on. I see them regularly on Twitter. I click to wherever they're posting.
Yeah. That's there's just some great content creators that have been around for a while. It's weird because sometimes people talk, and I'm sure you get the same thing. Well, people, because you're more of an OG than I am, people will talk to me like I'm an OG. I'm like, I felt like I was late to the game in 2013 when I started.
You are, dude. So let me tell you what happened in the game before then. Before there was, YouTube and Google Video, a person like myself who had questions about the world, I had to be more resourceful. I had to resort to going to eBay and buying duplicated DVDs from people's presentations in the 90s. And here's Jordan Maxwell's basic slideshow presentation and these sort of things, right? I would buy here's 50 movie documentaries for $30, and people had ripped like all these 9/11 in plain sight and all these first documentaries like about 9/11. So my time frame is from 2001 to present. From 2001 to 2005 or 6, there's no videos on the internet. It's like, unless somebody uploaded the MPEG one and they're paying for the download bandwidth, all that's like, it just wasn't a thing. So to get content, that was one of the only places. There's nothing at a library that's going to help me at the level of trying to learn outside what they're telling you at the library. But there were all these other presentations. That's where I learned about, I mean, I know about the book Tragedy and Hope from a DVD produced in the 90s by Stanley Monteith, a dentist from San Francisco, who happened upon the book and learned. So I heard his presentation and I was so incredulous. If you look up on BitChute or any site that doesn't censor, it's called The Brotherhood of Darkness by Stan Monteith, Monteith. And he's in it was like Liberty Forum. It's like a Christian forum where they do these presentations, because I'd seen many speakers from that place over the years. And he gets up and he tells this whole story about Cecil Rhodes and the British Empire. And I was so incredulous. I was like, bro, I went through 5 years at university. Like, if this existed, I would know about it by now. Like, I'm a smart person. And I went out and started looking into what he said. And every point that I was incredulous to, I was like, shit, that's going on. Why don't we know about this? And then I was like, I got to get a copy of that book. So by the time I got the first edition of Tragedy and Hope, it was 2004. And by that point, I bought that URL, which I then 5 years later turned into tragedyandhope.com, and it's still in business today. It's like the headquarters, because the tragedy is this is going on. The hope is here's solutions, right? So it's all about balance, peace and revolution. It's a coincidentia oppositorum. So I try to balance all the work that I do, right? It's not just about the problem. It's like, here's solutions with it. So Tragedy and Hope, the book, then led me on to who else knew about this? Well, there's people who wrote books similar to Quigley's book before him, right? About the takeover of the education system and these sort of things, little pieces. So then you can find outside. Then you find someone like Anthony Sutton. And there was, again, no videos of him back when I'm learning this stuff, but there's some DVD interviews. You can get a DVD interview of Norman Dodd being interviewed by either Monteith or G. Edward Griffin. Like, these things were floating around back then, these presentations.
And how cool was it when you would put it in and you felt like you're watching some shit that was classified? You're like, I'm watching some underground classified shit that just, because I remember
that's exactly what it's like, man. I'm listening to Ted Gunderson on a DVD talk about CIA child sex trafficking, which is it's in the news this week. This is from 30 years ago, right? And these sort of things, right? So you're seeing this. Or I have the multi-disc set of Kay Griggs. You know who she is? Did you ever get to that level?
The name didn't. I might still be a purple belt, but
this is a DVD produced in the 90s. Kaygriggs is what you would search on a site that doesn't censor, and you're going to see this demure Southern belle woman, maybe in her 50s. She's sitting in this chair talking to her pastor, and it's a confessional that goes on for like 6 hours. And the stories that she tells in there have a hugely high level of validity. Like, because I checked it out over a period of like 10 years, because I kept going back as I learned stuff and re-listening to it. I was like, oh yeah, that guy, General Gray, he was involved in those special psyops. And how would she, like, she didn't have the internet back then when she had her husband's journal, and her husband was a spook for MI6 CIA. Who had been compromised sexually at Princeton. And this is how they got. So she tells you the whole story. She's talking about in various forms of sexual indoctrination through these other levels of power, including the military as well as politics. She's being very, like, she's just telling, like, this is the facts of her life that she got into because she met this guy. And, so it's interesting. And I was, again, incredulous when I first heard her story on these DVDs, because I didn't know up from down. I didn't have a method to discern fact from fiction yet. I'm using gut instinct and does this match up? But when I got those tools and went back and I was like, okay, she says this, does this check out? Like, each thing that she's talking about is pretty much, you can verify a lot of these things in a tertiary verifiable, like meaningful, valid source, right? That these people are involved in echelons of what she's talking about. So there was that. I have cases of them. So there's probably 100 in each case, like 200 of those documentaries And then once Google came along, everyone put them there. And then YouTube is like 10 minutes only. So people would chop them up and there'd be 30 pieces to it, right? And then after that, you had places like topdocumentaryfilms.com, and they would just be like the clearinghouse. And then they would send you an email every day. And it's like, oh, you browse through. It's like, oh, I haven't seen this one. So like over the period of the past 20 years, I've seen easily, 100 plus documentaries on 9/11. So if there's one I haven't seen, I'm going to watch it because like I need to know what I need to know about that topic, and I haven't seen that, so I'm going to check it out because I don't assume I know everything. I'm still learning, right? But I could greatly I could point with a lot greater certainty and precision today to how exactly that went on than I could back in those early days watching DVDs. I just knew there was something going on, and I needed to learn a whole lot about the world as it exists, as opposed to the world I assumed they told me was true. And that's where you learn about Iran Contra and the Finders and Operation Midnight Climax, where the CIA was drugging people and catching them in sexually compromised positions for blackmail. Like all the proto Epstein stuff is there. So it's not like these places are protecting him so much as he worked in their infrastructure and they're protecting themselves.
Well, Midnight Climax that was actually, I think, when they were experimenting with
LSD.
Yeah, in Canada or somewhere, brothel somewhere or something.
San Francisco, I think.
Oh, what? Okay, yeah. Well, it's been so while.
Well, also Canada. I'm sure Vancouver. They probably did it up there. I mean, there was. For
like,
what we know about, that's tip of the iceberg. So let's assume that they were doing what they could do.
Well, that's the other thing too, right? It's like by the time we learn about this stuff, who knows what the fuck's going on? Like you think of the MK Ultra papers that were, you could publicly find online. I mean, that's, if that wasn't exposed, we would never know about that, and people would whisper about it, and you'd be like, oh, that's too crazy to be real. And it's like that. Sometimes it takes a long time before some of this stuff is uncovered, and then the opposite's true too. Sometimes it's in plain sight. Some of the books that I've heard you and Corbett talk about, like, I mean, you guys have an amazing book collection. I mean, some of the originals and some of the books that you have is just insane. But they openly talk about this stuff, and it's sometimes mind-blowing how people have a hard time accepting something to be true. And it's like, no, they're openly talking about it in their book, that this is their purpose, or this is their motive, or this is what they want to do, or this is the image that they want of the world, or whatever. So that's very fascinating too. I mean, is it just people don't read books? Is that they're not even concerned?
That's what Dulles said. So let's rewind for a second. The first public notice of MK Ultra, I think, is ABC's Mission Mind Control, which is like a special they did. That might have been like the first public thing they get out there. So let's say the public now knows about MK Ultra. Does it make any difference? Not really, not for most of them, right? Now let's say that the public, something else gets, told, and the public now knows. Only a small group of us really internalize what that all means. The rest of them just keep acting like everything's fine. So like if whether or not Operation Mockingbird or Operation MK Ultra is disclosed to the public and the public knows, most of the public's behavior doesn't change anyway, right? It changes for people like us. We're like, oh, the government's surveilling us. Maybe we should like act as if. Why are they surveilling us? When are they going to use that data? What use case do they picture down the road being able to call up Ricky's everything for the past 20 years? What do they think? That's about control. It's not about keeping us safe or providing us a service. Like if they did that and they're like, hey, Ricky, anytime you lose something, we got it for you. Like if there was a little service attached to that, we wouldn't be so anti, but we're like, that's just straight up totalitarianism. And you're right. They do say it. Like H.G. Wells wrote a book called The Open Conspiracy. He's like, we're doing it right in front of you. He's like, the new world order will be a world religion. And that real world religion right now is scientism, and people believing things that Tony Fauci says has something to do with the science, because that guy hasn't practiced medicine. And he has an awful track record with people, by the way. A lot of people die in the presence of Tony Fauci over the years, whether it's the little kids that they did the HIV experimentations on without consent and the thousands of dying over AZT, or the fact that he denied people early treatment for the past 2 years in order to get emergency use authorization for a synthetic chemical pathogen producing gene therapy. Like, what's going on here in this place? Well, most of the people are under mind control. Makes total sense. Total sense. I understand. Okay, so where's the other conscious people? How do we survive and thrive and not get taken into the Borg? Because that's what they're trying. Oh, you don't have the Borg shot. You need a card. Like New York just reversed it today. Instead of needing a card that says you're vaccinated, everyone's cool except for the unvaccinated. They have to have special cards and permits. Might as well just put a yellow star on their sleeves, mark them, right? We haven't seen this anywhere in history with atrocious outcomes, right? So we're on a precipice, and we need to be able to stand our ground and push back. Otherwise, or as Sun Tzu would say, we're on death ground. And that's the best place you can be, because that's where you realize that you're up against it, and now you will assert yourself against this force. So I'm not sure what Musashi would have on that in the 5 rings. I'll have to check into that, but I got some Sun Tzu for you there.
Yeah, Kerry Mullis is another one who was very outspoken against Fauci.
He's awesome. I'm sorry he died right before COVID broke out.
I know. I would have loved to interview him because he's such a. Have you read?
He did not like Fauci, and he did not think PCR should be used for this sort of thing. And like, he also asked Luc Montagnier, the Nobel Prize laureate for discovering the connection between HIV and AIDS. He went to Luc and he's like, "Hey, I was told I got this grant. I got to write this paper. What's the primary source for that?" And Luc gives him something like recent, and he's like, "Bro, this is 30 years ago you did this, or 20 years ago. Why are you giving me recent stuff? Like, what did you use?" And he kind of just smirks and walk away. It's like, that's why he's got the Nobel Prize. So he doesn't say shit about there's no evidence to this connection. He's the guy that got all the gravitas from making the connection. It's like a false payoff. And then Mullis, who apparently got his Nobel Prize from actually doing chemistry and doing something, was a little taken aback, like, whoa, that dude, what's going on here? So he started to question at Nobel Prize winning level. He starts to question, hey, what's really going on here? That, there's a second floor, but there's no first floor. What's going on here? And there's nothing holding up except people's assumptions that what they've been told about these things are true. So he also said like some pretty damning words about Fauci, and he's an interesting character of the past. His piece, the PCR test is brilliant creation, but what they're doing with it is evil, because it has nothing to do with medicine or science or health or keeping people safe. It has everything about using those numbers to grab power by, instead of, if you get a viral load replication after cycle threshold of 13 to 25, you might be able to have enough viral load to spread to other people if viruses exist, like you guys claim. But when you're running it 40 times to make someone positive, tells me the fix is in. And as soon as Biden got in, they're like, hey, lower the thresholds down to 25. I read that document. I'm like, the fix is in. It just verifies. I don't want to always assume the fix is in. So I give them the benefit of the doubt, but they keep like slapping me in the face with it. Like, oh, this is how we're doing it. When I read their report like last February, and they're like, we're going to up it, instead of 1 dose or 6 doses or 6 applications. And I'm like, they're just juicing the public. They're like, oh, we got buyers. Well, let's sell them more. And everyone thought that was crazy. And now it's like, no, you're going to need 6 boosters a year. They last about 2 months. Right. So they got you 6 times a year being a customer, and your immune system on subscription, like you have a license for it, like you're buying it from Bill Gates or somebody, software, not for your computer, but for your biological computer. You don't think that's serious? But it's a vaccine. No, it's not. They changed the definition of vaccine to make this a vaccine. That doesn't mean it's a vaccine. There is no immunological protection, long-term or short-term, or it doesn't work like it's a gene therapy. That's what it is. Let's just call it what it is. And then have an honest discussion about it. And if you can't, it means you're gaining power from the lie. And why? Because the truth matters. And if people have it, they wouldn't be doing business over there.
Well, Moderna has never created it. I mean, they're a gene company,
They were a cancer gene therapy company. And then in 2017, they got the mRNA approval right after they had gain of function, something for which they could use mRNA for. So they created the chimera. And there's a long train of abuses that we can go through, that it didn't come from the wet market, and it came from Fauci and Peter Daszak and DARPA and NIH and Francis Collins, all those people, and Ralph Barrick with his no-CM technique at University of North Carolina, and the bat lady hanging out in the bat cave with Daszak. That's the story that the future knows. That's what happened, right? In the world where Tony Fauci's still like, that's the wet market. It's like, bro, no, sorry. Next, what's your next move? Because we no longer buy that. Didn't buy it from the beginning. Didn't make any sense. What made sense is the place that makes bat chimera viruses down the street either leaked it intentionally or accidentally, but it got out, bro. that the bat from Laos didn't fly to the wet market 1,000 miles, that the bat lady and Peter Daszak went out and got that, brought it back, started experimenting with it. It has furin cleavage sites, means it's cut and pasted together with other animals, right? How do you get pangolin DNA in this thing that's going around getting into people? That didn't happen through nature. And if it happened through nature, you wouldn't need a BSL-4 lab in a communist country operating with American dollars, built by French bankers, by the way, right? It's not just America in this, everybody. This is why it's 203 countries or 208 countries being taken over at once right now. It's an international organization of cartel criminals, multi-generational, most of them doing this. And they're pretty good at what they're doing. That's why they're getting away with it so far. But it doesn't have to last. And what perpetuates it, what fuels it, is people's assumption that what they've been told hundreds of times has been true, because they were told hundreds of times. That repetition replaced fact. This is the point. When you go to these people with evidence, it bounces off of them. Just like if you tell people about MK Ultra, it bounces off of them, right? They don't have what they need from that piece of information, because they didn't make their decision or current position logically in the first place. They made it emotionally, because they need that daddy figure of authority to do the thinking for them. And the smart people on the other side of the screen must know better than me, who's literate and know how to read black and white. They have us doubting ourselves. They have us doubting our intellectual capacities. They have us with our shields of intellectual self-defense at zero. And just tell me, Dr. Fauci, how do we survive the situation? It's fight or flight. They race people to the bottom of the brainstem, man. And the only way out of that is to ask questions and to be incredulous and get to your neocortex. And that's where we can problem solve. That's where we can communicate with others. And that's where we can take effective action that brings about pleasing results. That's what they don't want, which is why 85% of my time, that's why I do what I do. The podcast, that's great on Sunday night. It's good. It's good relief. It's good venting. But the other time when I'm helping individuals and their businesses and their families preserve, proliferate, maintain, attain, and retain freedom, that's meaningful and substantial in a way that never came from a corporation that I worked for.
Something you said, or you guys discussed on last week's podcast, which is, it's so true. You guys were talking about how most people who are very passionate about, like, oh, they're pro-vaccine, or they have a very strong stance on something, a lot of that's based on this assumption that everybody, like all the mainstream publications, they're telling you that everybody agrees that this is fact, this is true. And then the people who actually look into it realize, like, okay, there's actually a lot of disagreement in this, but you're painted this picture, this illusion that, oh yeah, this has been settled. The science, like that, what you keep hearing over and over again, the science has been settled, and you don't have to look into it. And you see it, and I'm sure you've had a lot of discussions with family members or friends that disagree with you, that very shortly into the conversation, you realize, like, they're very passionately pushing for a narrative that they haven't looked into at all. They know nothing about this. And yet they're more emotionally invested in their stance than I am. And yet they know nothing about what they're talking about. And 9/11 is a perfect example of how you can take advantage of people's emotions, because as we know, Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Afghanistan had nothing to do with 9/11. And yet we've convinced the public, because they were so emotional and they were having an emotional response, that, hey, we need to do something because of 9/11. Let's go to Iraq and Afghanistan, even though it made no logical sense. And you see it happening now, where people are just accepting things that make no logical sense because of emotion.
But Ricky, the wife of the chairman of the Federal Reserve, was Alan Greenspan in charge at that time. His wife, forget her name, Andrea Mitchell. She's the first one to let people know it was Osama bin Laden. So how are we going to have these scary narratives without early drops of factless, baseless evidence? And, people attach onto those things with their emotions. And that's very much, you're right. That's how they control people. And so you can have conversations with people when you realize, oh, so it kind of works like this. The more intelligent and diligent the researcher is, the more uncertainty that they're going to entertain, because they deal with it all the time. But the people who have done no work, they're super certain. And I think the best research clinical research, if you want to look into like white paper style research paper on this, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect. So David Dunning and Justin Kruger made these observations that incompetent people can't recognize their own incompetence. And so they have a high degree of certainty, right? Not based on experience and having done it before, but based on they were told by the right source that this is how it goes. Okay. And so what does that leave everyone else who doesn't have Dunning-Kruger syndrome going on? It leaves us with, I don't believe that, so I'm going to look it up. Oh, geez, I just learned Alan Dulles really did say the American people don't read. He says it like in a off the beaten path conversation at the back of this book. It's a Warren Commission transcript, but you can find it. Like I spent a long time going to verify, where did this man actually say this thing? Whereas everyone else just assumes it's true. But when it doesn't have like the volume, the page, and the reference, like where it's coming from, I'm incredulous. I don't believe that, because that information is useless to me if it's false, and it's useless to me if it's factual, if I can't tell you where it came from, because it's not ever about believing me. It's about listen to the messenger, to look at the message and check it out for yourself, because that's where the learning goes on. When I say on page 408 of David Rockefeller's memoirs from 2001, he says, some accuse me and my family of being internationalists and having anti-American agendas, and I stand guilty, and that's how it works. That's him admitting to this international cabal that manipulates America and a bunch of other countries for the past 100 years. That should be substantial and give people pause and say, well, I have to question everything now. Good, welcome to the club. Wall Street Journal, New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, all these other trusted sources. Operation Mockingbird, interlocking boards of directors, Bilderberg Group, Davos. Like there is something going on there that you're not being told about, and they wouldn't meet in secret together and not tell you if there wasn't a power differential. You don't see them vlogging from inside. Hey, I'm with Klaus Schwab. We're in the bathroom. Yeah, we ran out. Whatever. It's like that doesn't go on. What stays in Chatham House, what happens in Chatham House stays in Chatham House was the rule. And then they're like, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas as marketing. It's like, you have to understand the nature of the place that you're occupying if you seek to take steps and have pleasing results. Most people who have less than pleasing results in their life are taking steps that are running into these obstacles like they're blindfolded, and people are treating them like the piñata.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, that's why I hope, and to be optimistic, I hope that what happened in 2020 does wake up a lot of people at a rate that we've never seen before. And I said this on the last Union of the Unwanted, how I feel like there's a race, like there's what's going to happen first. Are they going to implement all the things they want to implement before everybody wakes up, or are we going to have enough of the percentage of the population to wake up so then we can resist and hopefully stop them from it?
And I think the difference is media. Like, how do we get messages to more people? It's through, that's why I focused on creating media for all these years, because I thought this is the missing link. These people over here who should be telling us this aren't. That's a crisis, but it's also an opportunity, right? That's a quote attributed to JFK. The Chinese word for crisis is two characters, danger and opportunity. That's not a real quote, by the way, but it's in a movie with Ray Liotta where he plays JFK or whatever the situation. It was a Rat Pack movie. I guess he was playing Sinatra, but it's in there, right? So you got to check into these things. That was the point there. There's opportunity from what they've done. So I'm trying to take the white pill expression with you, because I'm a white pill type of person. I think that our ability to learn, given these situations, even though the people haven't yet, you're talking about what is the triggering effect? What is this tipping point? What's going to create and catalyze and really make this thing start to take off in a nonviolent, educational, informed consent type of way? And I think it's through creating media. I think it's through getting people like you do on your platform. Like you got Robert Malone, the guy who created mRNA, right? Look at all your big interviews. Why? Because you asked. It's not about how many downloads do you get. These people didn't really care, right? Because they could compare you and be like, oh, well, the opportunity is over here with people with millions of, right? They do your show because they see your other interviews. They're like, I would enjoy being able to speak on that platform uninterrupted. I think Ricky's audience could use my message or benefit, right? That's why they scheduled time. That's how you book those big fish, because you had the balls to ask. How many of these people did you have to ask more than once, by the way? Anyone you had to chase down to get the interview?
Yeah, there's always I'm trying to think. It's weird. You know, it's funny. I was just on Charlie Robinson's show this afternoon, and we were talking about that, you know, just kind of talking about how as a podcaster, you always get the question like, how do you book the guests that you get on? And I don't think it's one size fits all. I mean, a lot of it's just I mean, I get OCD about stuff where I'm like, I really want to have them on. I'll find like every method I can to try to contact them. I've gotten better with asking people for help because for a long time I I wouldn't because I'm gonna, figure it out on my own. I don't want people to think that like I'm friends with them because I want some help or because I'm trying to get connected with a friend or somebody that they know. But then as years went by, I think being so consistent with trying to contact people, a lot of people came to me for help. So then I'm like, well, now that I'm giving out so much help with networking, I'm like, I feel a little bit more comfortable asking. So, but everybody, yeah, like Dr. Robert Malone was one of those guests that came on immediately after I contacted him. Mickey Willis, I think it was through Facebook. I couldn't find any, and it was a bad time too because he was being censored everywhere. And I would see him pop up on Facebook from time to time, and I'm like, let me comment and see if he'd be interested. And somebody hit me up and was willing to come on. But I think somebody like you or myself who don't have a agenda and we're just kind of curious people, I think people connect with that. Like I've had Roger Stone on. I've had it was funny because Charlie was just talking about how awesome it was when we had Roger Stone on the Union of the Unwanted. At the last second, he came on for us because I didn't have any big guests at the time to come join us. And but I'll have somebody on like him, Jack Abramoff. But I'll also have somebody on the left, like a Lee Camp, and I mean, I think one of the few people on my bucket list I haven't had on yet is a like Abby Martin. I've had Jimmy Dore on before. I had Dave Rubin back in the day when he was actually, I think he just left TYT or maybe he was still there, but that's how long ago that was. And but yeah, I mean, a lot of it's just I think people really connect with I was saying in the beginning of the show about how I really enjoy the fact that when I listen to you on Grand Theft World, it sounds like when I'm hanging out with you, like it's the same Richard, and I like that because you don't stray away from throwing a joke in there or trying to be funny or whatever, and it makes the show.
Well, we have to laugh about these things, man, because otherwise it's a really grim. The reality that's there is grim, but it's only grim because we have taken away from ourselves the ability to enact our will in this place. And we do have free will, and they want us to believe we don't. Here's how it works. You have the choice to think or not to think. If you don't think, if you go stimulus reaction and go under their control through assumption, you have outsourced everything that is unique to you in this life. And now you're a passive spectator in somebody else's script. Whereas if you choose to put thinking in between stimulus and reaction, you create stimulus, thinking, and then thoughtful response. And that's how you get to freedom. And that's how freedom exists. So in between stimulus and response, there's a space. And if you choose to insert the question mark, ask questions, that will lead you to your freedom, and it will help lead others to freedom as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm it's always a joy to listen to you talk too, because you're just, I don't know how you consume and regurgitate so much information and how you remember names and dates and things that I'm just like, how does how does he remember all this? I know you have that,
It's alive within me. Like these are active thoughts that I have because I delved into all these books over the years because there was nothing else to do after I got to the point where I got to with what I saw. There is no other priority. Like golf, I gave up golf for 20 years. Who wants to chase a little white ball around the course when there's people like multi-generational pedophile serial killers fucking us all up right now? So, but there also comes a place where you're like, okay, that's going to go on. It's going to go on beyond my lifetime. We're never going to totally solve it. What we learn to do is keep and insulate ourselves from it and bring that down a couple notches from Spinal Tap 11. Let's make that a 3, right? That's going to take work. That's going to take organization. That's going to take fundraising. That's going to take ad campaigns to get people to know about these things. So working in the middle of that storm is very peaceful, and that storm is going to go on all around me, but it's kind of like you move around as the eye of the storm in that case, and you don't get overtaken by the storm.
Well, I'm glad you picked up golf again, because something that I've talked about also on the show
We
recently.
should go golf and cigar, man. Let's do it.
I will. I'm not. I don't golf. I do smoke cigars. I will make a fool out of myself attempting to golf. But it's one thing that is so important, and like I said, I've said this on the show a few times, is that especially us content creators and researchers and people who are constantly deep into this research and information that can be doom and gloom and a little bit depressing. Uh, we can't forget to also enjoy life. I always say how it's funny because we get so passionate about trying to fight back against the people who aren't letting us enjoy life, that fight consumes so much of our life that they end up winning because we stop enjoying life. And it's like we're fighting for that freedom to do those things, to be with our loved ones, to go do the hobbies we enjoy, to just live life however we want to live it. And we can't get so caught up in fighting against those that don't want to let us do those things that we stop doing those things. And it is important to, I was like you. I remember when I started the podcast in 2013, but like many of us, before we started content creating, we were consuming a lot of content. And for years, I just stopped watching sports. I stopped consuming anything that wasn't about history or real life. I would always tell like girls I was dating or whatever, I'm like, oh, can we watch a documentary instead of a movie? Because I'm like, why not watch something where we can learn something? And I'm like, the movie seems kind of pointless and a waste of time or whatever. And that's probably not true, because there is a lot of thought provoking things that can happen in a fake movie or scripted movie or well-written movie that can provoke thought and really be beneficial. But that was kind of my thinking. And after a while you learn like, okay, well, there's nothing wrong with just enjoying things for just the sake of enjoying it. And if I enjoy it, and if I don't learn anything from it, maybe if it's not adding to my constant addiction to wanting to understand the world, there's nothing wrong with just enjoyment for enjoyment's sake. And so I think it is a balancing act, and we can get we can get caught up in this world where you stop doing those things. But we can't forget that, like, that's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for the freedom to enjoy those things. So
You can't become the thing that you hate by raging against that thing. It's like, that's not good. So you need to recognize that these things exist, and how do you insulate and keep those things away from your life while you live your life on under your own direction and master and commander of your own helm, right? Don't let someone else be steering your ship of state. Be able to move freely through there. And I think what stands between people doing that in reality is communication and actually talking through and asking the questions with each other. And it's not happening these days because everyone's so polarized. You can't, and then if you can't reach out to people with differing thoughts, then you're left with echo chamber of these people just think this thing, right? And at the beginning of anyone waking up, kind of getting red pilled to this process, you're going to have a learning curve of information, but you're also going to have a deficit in communication. So you're going to be learning things and trying to communicate them, but people around you aren't going to get it. But if you persist through that learning curve and you start to balance out your life, then your communication improves. You can rebond with those who might have been alienated from, your perspectives on blank, right? But it being the holiday times, like I've had a lot of students come to me in Q&As and they're like, hey, we're having this interpersonal problem with family or friends or whatever. And it's like, first off, your family's your family. You can't change that. Didn't have any choice in that. Love them as your family, and don't try to make them adopt your libertarian or political philosophy during, these times, right? Be there, serve them, help them, build that relationship, and then spark their curiosity so you guys can go on a journey together instead of coming at each other at odds, right? You can end up someplace new where you guys have both learned something, or you can try to prove you're both right without ever considering each other's views. And if you've tried like this way, I mean, it took me like 2 years before I could start really fluidly communicating the balance of what I, understood with what's going on and what people are thinking and where they're coming from, right? But it's a skill set, and you have to develop these new muscles because you're learning new things about the world, and then other people who haven't done that same work can't appreciate what value you're bringing to the table until they know. So the saying is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's a good place to leave it right there.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great quote. For I know you're a busy man and you have a lot of shit to do. Where can people listen to Grand Theft World? Where can people connect with you? Where can people learn more about your everything you're doing, all your projects?
If you want to listen to the podcast, first off, grandtheftworld.com has updated every day, Liberty, everything. And then there's a podcast tab on there. You click podcast. There's 57 episodes of Grand Theft World. You could go back and start at the beginning and learn your way forward, or you can start listening to whatever, and you don't have to listen to the whole thing. It's just a good habit to start internalizing some of this stuff during the week so you can have a cogent understanding of what's going on. If you're an individual looking for higher value skills or to improve your offer to the world, the website is getautonomy.info/ignite. That's the landing page. It's risk-free, it's transparent, it's form and function. It's not hyperbole. And then if you're an entrepreneur, an individual with a business or some sort of organized agorist offering to the world, autonomyunlimited.com is where we help clients who have those types of activities. And we provide the technical stack from website marketing, copywriting, graphics, shadow hosting, a whole list of services. And then people get what they need. One-stop shop.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great, man. I mean, definitely check out his work. Go back and check out some of his what made him an OG, some of the Peace Revolution, his documentaries, all his podcasts. I know when some people I'm sure are familiar with.
They have Peace Revolution, 9/11 Synchronicity, Ultimate History Lesson, Grand Theft World, all my films in the membership for Grand Theft World. But if there's people on here and they want something for free, go to marketplace.autonomyagora.com, and there's several free courses along with the courses we've produced for our colleagues. So Howard Lichtman's book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History, Benny Wills's Parrhesia Interpersonal Communications course, Michael Badnarik's Constitution course, Stefan Verstappen's How to Build Communities, all the things we need to do to fix this problem, Ricky. We're like building an Agora market where these are being offered.
That's awesome. And I love the fact that you guys are building a community and how you support other people's work and all that stuff. I know on Grand Theft World, I see my podcast from time to time on the feed there, which is pretty cool on the website. And, even your show, you're just constantly plugging everybody else's work because you're showing clips from their podcast.
It's easy to do. It's easier to plug my friend's work than it is to plug my own. And by the way, I would have worn my Ripple Effect sweatshirt today, but it's a little big. It's just oversized. So I wear it when I'm outside, but I didn't want to wear it for this.
I know the sizes when you order stuff, it's tough. Every brand's a little different. I've ordered stuff from there. I ordered my kids 2 shirts and one's like slightly bigger than the other. And I'm like, that's weird. It's the same size, but that happens.
Yeah.
But
yeah, right on. I appreciate you making time in your schedule, man. And I know you're busy and you got family.
It's my pleasure. I love doing this. I always learn something from it, especially if you're the guest. I'm definitely learning something from it, and it's always fun also to get some of my audience to go check out your stuff. I'm sure most of my audience knows of your more current stuff, but some of the old school stuff that really was a huge influence on me and many people who woke up a little bit earlier than many people were waking up now. But you know what? It's never too late to wake up and be exposed to this stuff. And I love Peace Revolution, some of the older stuff, and going back because a lot of that stuff. I think Brett Veinotte on A Union of the Unwanted, he talked about how we kind of almost lived in like a post-fact world. I think we're that's almost becoming true for so many reasons, because a lot of stuff that you reference in Peace Revolution or clips that you use, like that podcast might be the only place that has it.
Yeah.
It'd be impossible to find. So
that's exactly why I created it, because somebody in the future needs that info. And people right now definitely need, like, if you want to understand the Great Reset and Klaus Schwab, like if you want to understand that, learn the history that's in the Peace Revolution, because it's those same people. It's a finite planet. There's only so many people with his agenda. The history of the who, what, where, when, why, and how of what's going on today is in the Peace Revolution. And then week to week, it's in Grand Theft World, matching it up.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it's scary because you look at it historically, somebody like you or I, if we're researching a topic, we could find alternative perspectives. And now, like, I think about how my kids, if they want to go back and be like, oh, what the fuck happened in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, let me go online, if online's even a thing when they're our age. If they're not, who knows? Well, I
No,
don't.
your Alexa will say you're not allowed to access those years.
Yeah. Or if you can access it, it's going to be just a mainstream narrative
Mhm.
force fed to you. So
Whatever the people in the future want you to know about the past. That's generally how it's worked. That's an Orwell quote about those
well,
who
that's it.
control the past control the future.
Yeah, well, without a doubt. I mean, you can rewrite history by just doing that. I mean, 20.
That's literally what Orwell's character Winston Smith was doing.
Yeah,
Like the present controls the past and the past controls the future.
absolutely.
Something like that.
Without a doubt. I mean, you look at it like even the polio, like so in the anti-vax freedom or health freedom movement that I've always been kind of really involved with and passionate about. You'd always hear about like, oh well, polio and all these things thanks to vaccines, and
Mm-hmm.
you'd always hear these. So the conspiracy theorist perspective on that aspect would be, well, the rates were going down prior to the vaccine, and then the vaccine got all the credit. And thanks to 2020, I think that's a pill much easier to swallow for the most people because they're seeing it in real time.
Yeah.
COVID's not, killing people, and yet the vaccine's getting all the credit for the numbers and cases going down. They don't talk about the PCR test like you referred to, and the cycles and all the other things that are going on, and the vaccine's getting all the credit. And historically, people can look back at it and said, well, yeah, you don't think vaccines work? Look at that whole COVID pandemic that we got rid of thanks to the vaccine. So it's you're seeing it while we're living through it. We're seeing them change, or create the illusion while we're seeing it being created. It's
Yeah. And so if that was like a story in Grand Theft World, I would break it down like this. Go read The Moth and the Iron Lung. Go watch Benny Wills's Truth About Polio video where he takes his friend, his dearly departed friend Liam Schiff's work and shows you the contradictory evidence. And then I would say, oh, you bring that question to me. Why in Agenda 21 in 1992 did they have a goal by eradicating polio by year 2000 if the polio vaccine eradicated it in the 50s and 60s? Also, why is the UN vaccinating kids and Bill Gates vaccinating kids for polio, and they're getting polio and had to stop giving the vaccines to the poor kids in Africa that were subject to this, right? So there's a whole bunch of contradictions, and you can't answer those. So you're going to have to call me a conspiracy theorist unless you want to say, that's interesting. Can I see your references on that? Because I didn't know that, and I am interested in learning, right? There's two ways people can handle it. 1%, 5% of the time people say they're interested in learning, and they actually do. The rest of the time, it's easier for people to just call you names, throw a bunch of fallacies out there, and that just shows you the error in their thinking. It's like an engine trying to run going, put, kaplooey. That's not us, that's them. So their reaction isn't really with us, it's with their internals that they're expressing. So I don't try to take it personally if someone, intellectually farts through their mouth like that. that flatulence. I just stand back. I'm like, oh, so that's how you go through life. I got you. Nice. See you later.
Well, we'll have to get together sometime soon in Hartford, either with the kids or without the kids, and we'll have to get a date. There's too many good restaurants near where you live not to go out to eat and catch up a little bit while not recording. But well, I know you have a busy schedule, and I know what you do on Sunday nights. So Sunday.
Hey, did you? I started doing a vlog 2 weeks ago. So if you go to my YouTube page, it's just if you type in it, it's Tragedy and Hope Mag. But if you just type in Richard Grove, go there. Watch my vlog from yesterday because I think you'd get a kick out of it. I was teaching my son in the woods how to make char cloth for fire making and these sort of things. And then I cover the clips of the week, the highlights of the different things I did. So it's like me outside, not serious at my desk. It's for enjoyment.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Yeah. Great. How is the little guy doing?
He's awesome. He's 5. He's responsible. He's a loving, caring soul who hasn't been ruined yet by indoctrination through the system, making him into a callous, helpless, scarcity-minded individual. And that's what I think all parents should be doing, protecting their kids from those modalities that are internalized through schooling. Schooling's not about education. It's not about learning what you need to go forward to survive. It's about breaking these children intellectually and physically in certain ways so that they are never a threat to the status quo. And when you understand that the system does that on purpose, it's not going to be fixed from the inside. It needs to be abandoned.
Yeah, well, I think the reason I didn't get brainwashed, it's hard to brainwash somebody who's not paying attention. And I never paid attention in school. So
Yeah, you didn't take their authority that seriously. You're like, oh, I'm not too sure
I
about
didn't take
this.
any of it that
I'm going to look out the window and plan my future. Thank you very much.
I never thought it would pay off, but I think it did pay off. It worked out all right.
Yeah, man, because you're in your element. You're doing what you're great at. Like this is easy for you to do. And I always tell my clients, like, let's find what you find easy to do that you could do it at any time, but you enjoy it, but it also provides value to people. And then get you doing that and systematize the rest of this stuff.
Yeah, that's
You-
the part I still need to figure out how to make some, do this full time. But for the time being, I'm definitely enjoying, learning and growing and feeling like I'm a part of this community. Hopefully, saving civilizations.
I got Union of the Unwanted on my calendar for Monday night, and I hear Howard Lickman's going to come as well. Is that cool? We're you got that this Monday? Is that on your calendar?
Actually, what's funny? Because I was gonna email you, and because I haven't started emailing people about Monday's show yet, but we were talking about doing a kind of a year in review, and then maybe like what does the future hold? What do we think about what's coming down the pipe? So yeah, well, it's gonna be somewhat of a general topic, a show. So yeah, if you're free, I'd love to have you on Monday with us, and it might be, I think the following Union of Unwanted, a couple guys might be busy, so we're like, you know what, we'll do the year in review this one just in case the next one doesn't happen.
Well, I can wait. I just know that I've given you excuses the past like several times you've asked, so I do have that spot open now on my calendar for such an activity when it's appropriate on your end.
I'd love to have you on, and that way, it's the first step in booking some guests for Monday. So yeah, I'd love to have you on, and if you have anybody that you want to have join us, more than welcome. Or I know you have some really intelligent people in the whole community at Grand Theft World, and I think who else did I talk to? I did email somebody else today that because I was actually I think I was Matt because I was talking to Matt about something about my website. I'm like, hey, by the way, we're doing a You Have Done Wanted Monday if you want to join us. So he's always a trooper in regards to staying. Well, I don't know if he stays up late or wakes up early for that. I don't know what time it is where he is, but yeah. So then maybe I'll see you Monday. But and until then, I'll send you. I think hopefully I'll get this out prior to that, and then I'll send you the links and all that stuff, and just let you know when it's up and live. And thanks again, and I'll definitely check out that video, and hopefully we'll all get together sometime soon.
Yeah, outstanding. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys again in person. You live so close, like we got to make it more of a regular thing, not just once or twice a year.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I know I missed your birthday party. You had
It was a good time, man.
I know it always is. It always happens that I end up having some. It's crazy because I feel like either you have weekends where you have nothing going on or everything's going on in the same weekend. Like you'll be like, wait, that's the same weekend as that and that. Well, like what the? And then the following weekend you'll be like, oh, what are we gonna do this weekend? It's like it's weird how it all works out.
Yeah, these celebrations of life when you can get together with people in real life and talk and hang out and be in the presence and share space, they're more cherished today and less taken for granted than ever in history. So yeah, next time we have a get together, the crowd that comes together, it's so many interesting eclectic people. It's a good time.
Yeah, and I think that gives that aspect of reality of like how important it is to actually communicate in person. That gives me a little bit of hope that people won't fall into the trap of like sacrificing all this real life connection for some cyber AI metaverse connection, and because I think that something will still be missing, but who knows, I could be wrong.
Yeah, the things people need for success aren't being offered for Black Friday. There's no coupon. They're evergreen things, and they're not going to be available at Amazon or Walmart or Target.
Absolutely. But thanks again, Rich. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll keep in touch, and hopefully I see you Monday.
I think I'll see you Monday. Thank you, Ricky. And thanks to everyone listening. This is a fantastic investment of my time. And I look forward to doing it again.
You're too kind. Thanks, Rich.
Peace.
Take care. Bye.